Hello everyone, it's Merlin here, and I have something on my mind that I would like to discuss, and that would be Star Trek. Specifically, what Star Trek really means, and kind of where we stand with the Star Trek franchise in recent years, particularly with the rebooted series. Now, some of you may or may not know, I'm actually a pretty big Star Trek fan. I've seen pretty much all episodes of all the series, and I've seen all the movies, and I've even dabbled into some of the video games and stuff. I do like Star Trek quite a bit. I've read some of the novels. It's been with me since I was a kid. I grew up kind of watching the original series. My dad would show them to me. I saw a lot of those, and then later on I saw the movies, and then eventually I got into Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, etc. Not a huge fan of Voyager. I think Enterprise is okay. The point is, Star Trek kind of is this big part of popular culture and science fiction. It has done a lot of really important things. It's kind of a great volume of stories that can be told through these characters, through this universe, because it's basically kind of an optimistic view of the future that Gene Roddenberry created. It's very humanistic, very grounded in reality, despite some of the fantastical things that happen. And that's kind of something that sort of separates it from its kind of apple and orange counterpart, Star Wars. But that's kind of one of the points I want to get to. Now, Star Trek obviously had a long line of success from the 1960s all the way up to about the early mid-2000s. However, the Next Generation movies kind of left something to be desired. Most of them were mediocre at best. I think First Contact was the only one that really got fairly good critical acclaim. But for the most part, the Next Gen movies, sadly, even though many people would consider Next Gen to be the superior series over the original series, the movies didn't quite have the same magic. So that really hurt the Star Trek franchise and kind of started getting people a little disinterested in it. That combined with the fact that Voyager and Enterprise kind of split fans, and then Star Trek Nemesis, the final Next Gen movie, really didn't do well. I think that there were some issues with it. It could have done better, but they obviously didn't care because the studio basically put it up against the two towers. Obviously, Star Trek wasn't going to win there. Didn't even come close, I think. So the combination of that, plus just plummeting viewership with the series, kind of left people less interested in Star Trek. And we had, I think, about sort of a 5-year gap there where there was no real Star Trek related media on TV or on screen. Now, of course, there were some extended universe things, but they didn't really get it into the mainstream popular culture. So Star Trek really was struggling for a while there. It had been kind of, I think, decreasing in its popularity since maybe the early 90s. Then, of course, comes the J.J. Abrams reboot, Star Trek, and more recently, Star Trek Into Darkness. I have mixed feelings about these movies because I do think they're pretty fun and enjoyable. I certainly like them, and when I first saw them, I was actually really happy that Star Trek was getting a reboot. I kind of want to cover a few bases. I want to start with a few positive things. I think the strongest thing about the movie was the Star Trek reboot really did a good job of grounding, I think, the magical element that made Star Trek popular. I think that it does have that sense of adventure and some of the more action-oriented stuff and the sense of humor. And I think most importantly, they had great casting. It had some actors that really, I think, captured the essence of these characters and brought them to life, kind of adding a new fresh spin on them for a newer generation, but still staying true to, I think, what is basically right for the character in most cases. I don't know if all the casting choices were great, but for the most part they were pretty good. And I'm not really that worried about the fact that it kind of threw away, years of canon. I mean, sometimes you gotta make things new, You gotta start fresh. It's okay. I don't really mind. We have 50 years of old Star Trek to look back on, and I know that the Star Trek Online basically follows the original universe, so it's still there. Now, the positive thing about the Star Trek reboot that J.J. Abrams did, I think that he obviously did love Star Trek, and he does have a respect for it. It's pretty obvious by some of the things that occur in the movies. And I think the good thing about it is, because they made it more action-oriented, and they kind of made it more fast-paced and flashier, kind of more modeled along Star Wars, it was something that the wider audience could kind of enjoy it and kind of bring it a little more into the mainstream. Because Star Trek is pretty popular, but it's more of a big cult phenomenon. I wouldn't say that it's quite the same level of Star Wars, which is also a cult phenomenon series, but it's always been a little more widely accepted. I think that's because Star Wars, it's more fantastical, it's more action-oriented, and it does deal with big concepts like Star Trek, but it doesn't really go into the nitty-gritty details, and it's not incredibly grounded in reality, focusing on the day-to-day events that occur in real life and kind of reflecting on some of these issues, whether it be political, moral, ethical, or philosophical. Star Wars kind of focuses on some basic, general, spiritual ideas, kind of follows the journey of the hero, the kind of very quintessential basic story that, has been around since mankind, focusing on the human condition, and just kind of puts it in space and adds some magical elements. That's why Star Wars is so unique and fun. But that's why it's very different from Star Trek, because Star Trek does a lot more. And I don't want to insult anybody. Star Wars is a great series, and it has had its problems too. Probably another video we made about that at some point. But I do enjoy Star Wars, not quite as much as I used to. I think I'm a little more of a Trek fan. But Star Wars is popular for a reason. There are some really good things about it, particularly the original trilogy. The thing is, Star Trek, I would say, is a little more of a smarter series. It's a series that more often than not tries to make you think. Now, Star Trek does have action in it. There have been episodes throughout the series that involve action. In fact, I think most of Deep Space Nine, the last couple seasons, was a war. But it was a war that was, kind of low-key. There weren't too many epic space battles until later on. It focuses more on the human elements and the cultural elements interacting with the different alien species, and it even focuses on family dynamics and even things as basic as dating and psychology and just everything. It covers a wide basis. That's one of the cool things about it. And while I do think that Star Trek has invigorated interest in the series again through the J.J. Abrams reboots, I kind of wonder if it really is Star Trek. And the reason I say that is because I feel that those movies have not really taken the time to focus on anything a little more groundbreaking. They haven't taken a lot of time to focus on really big ideas. And like I said, not all Star Trek has done that. Star Trek has had plenty of episodes that were just silly or action-oriented or honestly were just badly written. Star Trek isn't perfect. But these movies haven't really convinced me that they're smart in any way. Admittedly, they kind of have tried. I mean, the first Star Trek movie kind of had some time travel elements and sort of focused on the moral dilemma of what Spock felt. Just kind of the whole parallel universe thing. Of course, the sci-fi was wacky, as it always is, but there was a little bit of that. In Star Trek Into Darkness, they had some of the moral and ethical ideas about Khan. Spoilers, obviously, it's Khan. Everyone knew that. And just about him and his race and what to do with his people and how the Federation should respond to threats. I mean, kind of reflecting some of the anti-terrorist attitudes of the last decade or so. It's kind of doing that, but it's really kind of bare bones stuff. It's barely there. It's really just to see these characters interact, have fun, and just have some cool space battles. That's all well and good, but I kind of hope that future installments try to do something a little smarter, take some time to actually discuss things, focus on these issues, and just kind of have an interesting exploration of these ideas, because that's what Star Trek is. It's about exploration, both out into space and within the human condition. The new Star Trek movies have been fun action films, but they haven't really been mind-blowingly thought-provoking films, which I think Star Trek should at least try to be some of the time. And that's what I wonder, are these new films really Star Trek? Now, I know some people that have watched the new Star Trek films and think, oh, they're really awesome, but they haven't tried to watch any of the old stuff. So it makes me think, do they like Star Trek, or do they just like this particular type of Star Trek? Because I think it's not quite the same thing. And this gets into the whole, true fan argument, which I'm sure many people in the anime community know about. But, it's like, do you consider yourself a true fan if you just watch the Star Trek films? Do you like Star Trek? You like a certain type of Star Trek. But I think to really appreciate Trek as a whole, you have to see all the different series and at least try to watch some of these other films just to get a better idea of it. Because I honestly think that Star Trek is kind of heading in the right direction, but it needs to go back to its roots a little bit. It needs to slow down, take some time to breathe, and just kind of honestly write some more thought-provoking stories. I don't think it's impossible. I think they've got a great cast. I think they've got the tone fairly right, but they just have to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit, and I think try to stay a little truer to the aspect of Star Trek that has made it so popular for many years. Because Star Trek Into Darkness did well, but I think that it didn't do quite as well as it could have. And I'm wondering how long the Star Trek franchise is going to be able to survive if it just keeps pumping out these action ROMs. I think that they're going to have to mix it up eventually. Alright guys, well thanks for listening to my Star Trek discussion. Just kind of had that on my mind for a while. Wanted to get that out there. If you have any opinions about the new Star Trek franchise, the old Star Trek franchise, let me know what your favorite series is, your favorite captain, what your thoughts are on the future of it. And yeah, as usual, any video requests you might have, just let me know. Alright guys, Merlin out. Peace.